Hi, I'm Mary.
And I'm Katie, and this is The Housewife Did It.
True Crime Edition. I would love for you to like, subscribe, follow, share, rate. My incentive for that is when you request cases, I always do them next.
Oh, heck
So if you want a certain case and you've done all those things, I'll do it for you.
Mm-hmm.
Which is how we got where we are today.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But I do have a real-time true crime because I think we should talk about it. So this week, police arrived at the home of Sonia Massey after she called them believing there was an intruder, like either in or around her home. She told them she had heard someone banging on the side of her house and was trying to get some help when they got there. She had answered the door in just her nightgown, and she was handling a pot of boiling water like she had just been cooking. And this is like all seen from the body cam footage. So Deputy Sean Grayson and his partner, I guess, followed Sonia into her home, and he began to ask her about her mental health history. He told her, yeah, he was like, oh, we've seen this woman before for a 1065.
He said, how are you mentally today?
He told her to turn off the stove so that they didn't start a fire, and she obliged. And then in the video, she looks really confused for a second, and then she says, I rebuke you in the name of Jesus.
Because they started backing away, and she says, where are you going?
Yeah.
And he said, away from your hot, steaming water.
And I have seen people said she did have, like, a mental illness history.
She was schizophrenic.
But, like, also, like, I rebuke you in the name of Jesus isn't, like, a threat. But whatever. And Deputy Grayson responded, you better fucking not, or I swear to God I'll fucking shoot you in your fucking face.
Which he proceeded to do.
Yep. And Sonia ducked down, and she started, like, apologizing, like, profusely. And then Deputy Grayson shot at her 3 times, and one hit her in the eye. In the body cam footage, he is then heard saying the gunshot wound was self-inflicted.
Oh, I did not see that part.
Somebody said, was this self-inflicted? And he said, yep, self-inflicted.
Yeah, so his partner said, I'm going to go get my med kit. And he said, dude, nah, that's a headshot. She's gone. And then at the end of the video, the partner says she's still gasping.
Yeah.
Not that it would have saved her life, but to think that you didn't get your med kit, but she was still alive is pretty horrifying.
So, yes, like Katie said, another officer on the scene attempted to get a medical kit to tend to Sonia's wounds, and Grayson told him, she's done. You can go get it, but that's a headshot. There's nothing we can do, man. What else could we do? I'm not taking hot boiling water to the fucking face. She came at me with boiling water. But, good news, Sean Grayson has been arrested for Sonia Massey's murder and condemned, I guess is the word I'm looking for, by his sheriff. In the statement, the sheriff over Sean Grayson said, quote, Grayson's actions were unjustifiable and reckless. Grayson had other options available that he should have used. His actions were inexcusable and do not reflect the values or training at our office. End quote.
Yep. So when he told her, you better fucking not, she did put the pot down.
Yep.
She put her hands up in surrender with oven mitts on them. She ducked down, which means that you had to then tower over the counter. It does look at the end of the video like the pot is on the floor and the water is on the floor. Probably because of how cluttered her counters were. It did look like she maybe has a lot of things in her house.
Yeah.
which is a side effect of mental illness. Yeah. And yeah, her daughter has come out and said that she has schizophrenia. When he asked how she was doing mentally, she said, "I did take my meds today."
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah,
I also saw
pretty rough.
I saw where they called her son, and they just told him, like, someone shot your mom in the eye, and but didn't specify like the situation or who it was. But he said that they told him someone shot your mom in the eye and it came out of the back of her head. Like, why why do you have to say it like that? Like, yeah. And like you're being specific on that, but not on who did it.
And it's like he probably does consider that self-inflicted, because like he probably considered that like police-assisted suicide. However, like she didn't hold a gun up to him, and he had already made his distance away from her. That water would not have hit him in the face.
Yeah. The other thing is, like, in my understanding is that in police training, there is a part where you're told, like, if your life is in danger, that you can shoot at someone. Your life is not threatened by a pot of boiling water. And also, she never said she was going to throw it at you.
Yeah. It's also like we see in like shows or whatever videos that like police do typically say to people, white people, put the gun down, or stop or I'll shoot, right?
Yeah.
And although he said it grotesquely, he basically said that to her. He said, "You don't do that or I will do this." An if-then statement. But then she said, "Oh, okay." And she stopped and she said, "I'm sorry." And so the point of de-escalating is to de-escalate. And she did, but he didn't. And
there was also no attempt to look for an intruder at any point, which is why she called.
Well, I think that they did. I think that the body camera footage that has been released has picked up after that. They said we didn't see anyone. I mean, we don't know how thoroughly they looked, if they believed that she's ill before they arrived. Right. But mental illness also, like, maybe, like, explains the "I rebuke you in the name of Jesus" comments, but, like, also 2 white cops just came in her house, and the fear of what could happen happened. It happened in the worst way possible. So when they started backing up and she started thinking like, oh, they're acting weird. Yeah. And then she said, "I rebuke you in the name of Jesus." Like, she also may have just been saying like, I'm scared of you.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, you proved her right. Yeah. So, yeah, it's pretty awful.
Yeah.
And
you want to be like,
to think of like how many people are now like, or already don't call the police for things. Yeah.
And like, you want to be like, oh, like they got something right. Like they fired him, they arrested him, they made a statement like completely against him. But it's also like, it just happens so often. Like, why are these people police officers? Like, how did they get this far into it, and like, and nobody knew that they could do this?
And I also want to say, like, coming from someone who worked in mental health, like, this excuse that, like, that's not their specialty and, like, they just don't know how to handle, like, it's not their fault. They, like, don't know how to handle mental health cases. Like, I can tell you that a good portion of police calls are mental health crises. So this is not the first person that they have met that has schizophrenia. This is not the first.
Not that hard to train them on it. Like, teachers are trained on like mental health issues every year, because you never know who you're going to have in your class, or like what their behavioral, there are kids diagnosed with emotional disturbance, like all ends of the spectrum in children. So the idea that, like, that's not their job and it can't be their job, like, that's not true. Like, they could be
trained. And it's not like every call can be weeded out. Like, if, which I hear is not the case, I hear that there really were people breaking into cars, but if the intruder was a delusion of hers, then you're not going to know that when she calls 911. She's going to say there's an intruder, and you're going to treat it like there might be an intruder. And so the amount of police calls, whether it's unhoused people, whether it's substance related, like the amount of police calls, there is no way, unless this is your second day on the job, that you have never encountered someone with a mental illness. And so to act like, well, how could they have known? Like, I don't know. I mean, social workers go into people's houses when they have knives, and they not like to garnish as a weapon, but they have cooking knives and they have boiling water, and they may say to their social worker, like, I hate you. And guess what? Like, we don't have the luxury of getting to have a weapon on us and getting to have potentially like immunity, and somehow we make it out. So
yes, transition. Before I get started, I want to apologize to everyone, because 2 weeks ago I promised a mystery, but I'm not going to give you one, because I have a case that was requested by one of our listeners. She wrote to us and said that one of the victims in this case was her grandfather's childhood best friend. She explained to me what a deep, profound impact his death had on her papa. And, like, I think it reminded me, like, this message that we always hear in true crime, and we're told not to believe it, but we believe it anyway, that, like, this could never happen to me. And she told me about, like, how her mother had spent time with this man, like, and his wife and their family grew up around them, and, like, would have thought, like, this could never happen to them. But it did. So I'm going to tell you that story. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
When the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette hired Mary Lee Orsini in 1967, I'm sure they never could have imagined the number of articles they would eventually produce about her and her husband and her lawyers, some of which are still coming out in the 2020s. But it's likely that no one who knew Mary Lee Orsini prior to 1981 could have guessed what she was capable of. So this is her story. Mary Myrtle Hatcher was born in Searcy, Arkansas, in White County on August 17th, 1947, to Henry and Julia Hatcher and 2 older siblings. Henry worked on a cattle farm near Gravel Ridge in Pulaski County, and Julia was a school cafeteria worker and school bus driver. Mary's family was poor, but Mary made it her mission not to let anyone else know that. Her family lived on a dirt road right outside of the Little Rock Air Force Base, and the children attended Sylvan Hills High School in North Little Rock. Mary's peers perceived her as a refined society girl before she dropped out of high school in the 10th grade, despite her family's low economic status. She did a really great job, I guess, at hiding that. After dropping out of high school, Mary wanted a fresh start and a new identity and began going by Mary Lee, or sometimes just Lee. One source described her as, quote, poison dressed up in a pair of high heels, a striking combination of raven hair, creamy skin, and ice blue eyes.
Cute.
When Mary Lee was 16 years old, on December 22nd, 1963, She married 18-year-old Douglas Sudbury, who worked at the Air Force Base behind her family's home, and the two moved to Riverside, California. I also saw that he worked at the Air Force Base, and she told everyone that he was in the Air Force, but that he was actually like a trainee of some sort.
Okay.
I don't really know how much of a difference that is, but I also thought, like, she's telling everyone that she's not poor. Maybe that's connected. The two quickly divorced after moving to California, but within just a few years, on July 14th, 1966, Mary Lee and Douglas remarried one another and became pregnant. In 1967, their daughter was born, and they got divorced again.
Okay.
Yep.
I just feel like this is costing a lot of money.
Yeah. Mary Lee moved to North Little Rock and began working as a sales representative for the Arkansas Democrat. In 1971, Mary Lee married her second husband, David Raymond May of North Little Rock, but this marriage was even shorter than her first, and Mary Lee left David after just 6 months of marriage. In 1976, Mary Lee met Ron Orsini. She had called him to let him know that her ex-boyfriend was in a relationship with his wife. When Ron's wife, Linda, confronted her lover about the call from Mary Lee, he told her that he had broken up with Mary Lee because she was a pathological liar, and he found her unnerving and dangerous.
Okay.
Mary Lee's first ex-husband shared this sentiment, saying he feared no man the way he had come to fear Mary Lee.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Seems like.
At the time, Ron was working as a partner at Central Heating and Air in the Mablevale area of Southwest Little Rock. Mary Lee had told Ron she came from a wealthy ranching family and in Stone County, and had graduated from the University of Arkansas at Little Rock. Neither of those things are true. She dropped out of high school in 10th grade, and her family was poor. Mary Lee and Ron married the same year they met, on September 17th, 1976, and moved with Mary Lee's daughter to the Indian Hills subdivision, a neighborhood of upscale homes in the area of North Little Rock. As I mentioned, Ron had been married before, and his ex-wife, Linda, described him as the kind of husband women can only dream of. She said he never asked her to clean the house. And in fact, she was impressed by the fact that he would clean the house himself without being asked.
Oh.
Which feels like, okay, but like that really is kind of a big deal.
Yeah. He would babysit his children.
It was crazy. She said he was quiet and steady. She had no explanation for why she had had an affair with their neighbor. And once their divorce went through, Linda realized that she had been foolish and wanted to work things out with Ron, but he had already started dating Mary Lee. So she missed her chance. Then, on March 13th, 1981, the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette published a story about the death of Ron Orsini. He had been found dead in his bed the morning of March 12th with a gunshot wound. I don't know why I couldn't get that out. With a gunshot wound to the crown of his head from a .38 caliber weapon. Mary Lee Orsini had called the Sherwood police on the morning of March 12th to let them know that she had found her husband Ron covered in blood in the bedroom of their home on Pontiac Drive. When police arrived at the scene, they found 38-year-old Ron Orsini lying face down on his bed with a massive amount of blood surrounding his head. They said that originally they thought he must have had an aneurysm or a cerebral hemorrhage. based on like the amount of blood. But once the coroner arrived, he discovered that Ron's hair had been covering a gunshot wound to the back of his head. And that is how he died. In her conversation with police, Mary Lee claimed that their daughter had been dizzy the night before Ron, or that I guess the night of Ron's death. Or the night before, depending on when. I don't know. I guess because he died in the morning. So the night before.
Sure.
So she slept in her daughter's room with her. The next morning, Mary Lee and her daughter went to breakfast, and then Mary Lee dropped her off at school.
So she slept in her daughter's room that night, and then that morning he's dead.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they went to get breakfast. She dropped her off at school. Then she ran some errands. She needed to pick some items up at a drugstore. And then it said she did some window shopping. She perused some local stores. And then she finally headed home. So she gets home. And she claims this is the first time she had entered her master bedroom since everyone had gone to bed the night before. And this is when she found Ron on the bed and called police.
Okay.
She told police she hadn't heard anything out of the ordinary in the night or the morning, despite being in the room right next door to Ron. And that this is why Ron had been dead for hours before she called police, because she had no reason to suspect anything had happened. She took her kid to school. She came back, and then she discovered him.
Yeah.
No murder weapon was ever found, although bullets were found. Quickly, police noted how odd it was that Mary Lee was insisting that her husband had committed suicide. Despite the fact that Ron had been shot in the back of the head while laying in bed.
And it's like, not, obviously sometimes it's true that you would just be like, my spouse is suicidal or whatever. But like, when you quickly, most people are like in denial about the fact that their partner would commit suicide. And most people are like, oh my God, absolutely not, find it. So it's like, when you are quickly like, guess he shot himself. It's like a little sus.
Yeah. And it's like, oh, he must have jumped off on this opportunity like the one time I'm not in our bedroom. Like,
and shot himself one door over. He just thought, that'll be great.
Yeah. Police also had a hard time believing that Mary Lee would have missed the sound of a gunshot with only a wall between the two rooms they were sleeping in.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah.
I have a hard time too, Mr. Police.
The North Little Rock Police Department began their investigation right away, starting with Ron's wife, Mary Lee Orsini. Pretty soon, they began to notice inconsistencies in Mary Lee's story and some elements that they referred to as curious. They said, this has some curious elements. After realizing that it would not have been possible for Ron to shoot himself in the back of the head, Mary Lee began to instead speculate that Ron may have shot himself by accident.
In the back of the head.
He couldn't intentionally shoot himself in the back of the head, but maybe he could if it was an accident.
She said, I have no other options. I will mold this to make it work.
Yeah. Then she realized that also didn't make sense.
It's like he threw the gun on the bed. It accidentally misfired.
It ricocheted
up to the back of his head. Yeah.
Yeah. What was he doing with the gun in the middle of the night or early in the morning? I don't understand. Then she was like, that also doesn't make sense. So sorry. So she changed her opinion again to the idea that someone had broken into their home and killed Ron. And I think, because they said that when she found him, he had been dead for a few hours, and I think he had been shot in the morning. So I'm guessing her implication is that someone had broken in while she and her daughter were out of the home.
Sure.
I will say, my source that asked us to cover this case, her mom said from what she remembers that Mary Lee's daughter was in the home when it happened. So I think more likely it happened before they left the house.
Mm-hmm.
But I think she's implying that
she has a reason to not want to have heard it. But the
right.
daughter has grown up and said, "No, I heard that."
I don't think that the daughter said that.
Oh.
My friend's mom said that.
But not based on your friend's mom is just saying I know she was in the home, not the daughter said
I don't know how
was in the home.
I don't know how she knows. She just said that that's what she remembers from when it all happened. Also, she was a child when it happened, so
sure.
I don't know if it's something she's heard later or what. But anyway, so Mary Lee, I believe, is saying this must have happened while we were out. But there was no sign of a break-in to the home. So police were able to uncover that Mary Lee was involved in some financial problems that had been keeping them from Ron. The couple had obtained a 90-day personal loan from Metropolitan National Bank the year before to bridge the gap between the closing of their first home and the purchase of this home they were living in on Pontiac Drive. And the due date for the loan had been October of 1980. But by the time Ron died in March of 1981, the loan was still outstanding. At the time, Ron's father was dying of cancer, so the loan officer, who was a friend of his, had chosen to contact Mary Lee about the loan so as not to trouble Ron when he's going through a difficult time. Eventually, though, Mary Lee, it's several months past due at this point. So eventually the loan officer did call Ron and tell him your loan is outstanding, and Ron had no idea that Mary Lee had not paid back the loan. He thought she had. After Ron's death, Mary Lee assured the bank that she would pay back the loan, and she told them, I can pay you back now because I have a life insurance policy in my hands. She had recently had Ron sign over his life insurance for her, giving her $344,000 in the event of his death that she is now saying she can use to get out of debt.
Yep.
Mary Lee claimed, however, that it was Ron who had financial secrets. She told police that the night before Ron was found, another reason she had slept in her daughter's bed was because she was beside herself with worry due to a sudden change in Ron's behavior. She claimed that she had found a bank bag, like the kind that you get a certain amount away of the bank or a certain distance away and they turn blue. A bank bag.
Oh, okay.
With lots of cash. And that she had overheard Ron mention a drop amidst other strange phone calls. She said Ron had told her to just trust him, but that she had hired a private detective because she would do anything to keep Ron safe. Apparently. Then she dropped a bomb on police. She told them her brother had killed Ron. She said that she and her brother had been in a financial legal battle. They were at it constantly. He didn't like her anymore. And the night before Ron died, she had seen her brother circling their house in an attempt to intimidate them. The police simply did not believe her.
Nice.
They said, I don't know. The mounting circumstantial evidence, that's the other thing though. At this point, all their evidence is circumstantial. The evidence against her was putting her at war with law enforcement, newspapers, television stations, and As police became more and more suspicious of Mary Lee Orsini, she hired a notable Little Rock lawyer named Bill McArthur and began spending a great deal of time in Bill's law office. Like, abnormal amount of time for a client. Also abnormal for a client was that she arranged a champagne party at his law office for his birthday.
Oh, yeah. That's cute.
She had also been seen out with Bill and his wife at a bar that Bill had become a partner in called BJ's Star-Studded Honky Tonk.
Wow. That sounds like exactly the place I would take my throuple.
It's giving Pink Pony Club.
Mm-hmm.
Bill invested in the club in the fall of 1981 during what resources referred to as the height of the urban cowboy disco craze.
Oh.
Which I feel like we're in again.
Yeah.
And the club opened for business in December of the same year. Pretty quickly, the Pulaski County Sheriff's Office began to suspect that BJ's might be involved in organized crime.
Oh.
News outlets reported a string of suspicious fires and other incidents involving the nightclub, and then a more serious incident happened. On May 21st, 1982, Bill McArthur's wife, Alice, was getting into her car when a bomb under her car exploded.
Dropped a literal bomb.
Yeah. Thankfully, it had failed to fully detonate, and Alice was left with just a few cuts and abrasions.
Okay.
But still, those who had become weary of BJ's possible connection to an organized crime ring wondered if this was them, like, upping the ante.
Yeah.
They were like, oh, they're really in organized crime. Mary Lee Orsini herself made a statement backing this theory and claimed that she believed she and Alice were on a hit list of some kind and that she was concerned for their safety. Eventually, Mary Lee's worst fears were confirmed, and on Friday, July 2nd, 1982, Bill McArthur and his neighbor found Alice McArthur deceased on the floor of an upstairs closet in their home of a gunshot wound to the head.
In the closet?
I know. Especially when you find out, like, what happened. It's weird that she was upstairs in a closet.
Are Bill and Mary, Lori Vallow, and what's his name?
No, because he will not ride for her.
Ah, good.
He refuses to ride for her. Alice's murder opened up an investigation that truly sent police in Arkansas all over the place. They were all different directions. So, what police knew at the time was that Alice had been home in Pleasant Valley in West Little Rock when she was killed. She had been packing for a couple's trip to Hot Springs that she and Bill had planned with several other, like, couple friends of theirs. A couple's retreat vibe. As she was packing, at about 4 p.m., 2 delivery men came to the door with a bouquet of flowers. They also knew that at the same time, Bill was at his law office with Mary Lee because she had requested to meet with him late in the afternoon. But at about 4:40 p.m., he excused himself because he said Mary Lee had no legal matters to discuss with him, and he needed to get home and get ready for his trip. He arrived home a little after 5 p.m., and that's when he and his neighbor found Alice's body in the closet. Alice was buried in the Garden of Apostles at Pinecrest Memorial Park and Garden Mausoleum in Alexander, Arkansas, in Saline County. Alice was born Alice Marie Miller on February 23rd, 1941, to an oil tycoon in Louisiana.
Fancy.
They called her in the newspapers and stuff. They called her an oil heiress. In the 2 pictures I have been able to find of her online, it's clear to me she's beautiful, she's fit, and based on her plans for the day, what she was doing, we also know that she was social and friendly and had people in her life that really enjoyed her. But that's all I know about her. As police went through their investigation, they felt the evidence against Bill seemed to be piling up. However, the public believed it was obvious that Mary Lee was a sociopath and that she was responsible for Alice's death. Fair. The public also thought that the Pulaski County Sheriff, Tommy Robinson, was incompetent because he pretty quickly took Orsini's side and began focusing the attention of the investigation on Alice's husband, Bill. But the beliefs of the public don't really matter in this. And Bill McArthur was arrested in the middle of the night, dragged out of bed by Pulaski County Sheriff's officers, and brought in front of a crowd of newspapers reporters. Photos of Bill in an orange prison jumpsuit were released as he made his way to court. Bill McArthur went to 2 hearings, the second before a grand jury, but he was never indicted for the murder of his wife. But Eugene Yankee Hall was arrested. In the conversation with police after his arrest, he told them, I guess they asked him about Mary Lee Orsini or something. He told them that he barely knew her. He had not spoken to her since July 2nd, maybe a few days ago.
Interesting.
Which is the day Alice McArthur was killed. The next day, Larry Darnell McClendon was arrested.
So who are these people?
You'll find out.
Okay.
Right now. On August 29th, 1982, Hall signed a lengthy, detailed confession, and in it he explained that he had actually known Mary Lee Orsini pretty well. He met with her to go over the plan for their payment and Alice's murder. Orsini told him that her lover, Bill McArthur, had promised to give her $15,000 to arrange for the murder of his wife, which she would in turn give to the assailants. Or assailant, because she's only meeting with one person. So, Hall and Orsini planted a bomb on or around Alice McArthur's car, and the bomb had successfully exploded, but did not seriously injure Alice. This is what he's writing in his confession.
He said, it is not my bomb's fault.
Yeah, my bomb was fine.
I did some of my best work out there.
Yeah. After the first failed attempt on Alice's life, Orsini met with Hall again, and this time to prove how serious she and Bill were about wanting Alice dead, she said Bill was willing to pay $25,000 for the murder of his wife.
For you to get it right.
Together, Hall and Orsini worked out a plan to kill Alice in her home, and Hall suggested they bring in a friend of his from prison to be the trigger man, and he hired Larry McClendon, who would then split the $25,000 evenly with Orsini and Hall.
This is too many people involved.
I don't know why she's getting money.
Yeah.
Orsini stole a gun from a man she had been dating for the past several weeks, which I thought she was dating Bill.
Never.
Named Dr. C.H. Woltz. On the day of the murder, Orsini provided the 2 men with a gun, a clipboard, a sign for a florist company, and a bouquet of flowers.
Okay.
The 2 men arrived at the McArthur home and rang the doorbell, and when Alice answered the door, McClendon entered the home and shot her. My question is, how did they get upstairs and into a closet?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Unless they put her there.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd have to know, like, how is she found? Is she, like, shoved into the closet? Like, did they just put her there so she wouldn't be found immediately? They said, we have to deliver these flowers to your closet.
Maybe they followed her and she thought they had left.
Door-through-door service. We have to get these to your bedroom, ma'am.
Let me put these away for you. I have no idea.
Yeah.
The thing about this case that, like, tripped me up was it kept talking about, like, how infamous it was at the time, but I felt like I could not find any information on it, or, like, the information didn't make sense.
Yeah.
So, like, I'm doing the best I can with what I was given, but, like, some of this stuff, I'm like, how were they arrested 3 days after she was killed, but also her husband was arrested?
Yeah, they just said, let's arrest everyone and, like, see what sticks. But, like, how did they find these guys?
And he went in front of a grand jury.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know.
We don't need to know the days.
Yeah, sorry. Just know that this happened. After they confirmed that Alice was deceased, they fled the scene and hauled through the gun, the fluorescent sign, and the clipboard into the river. And then he told them, we didn't even get any money.
Wow.
On September 2nd, 1982, Hall's confession was leaked to the Arkansas Democrat and published in the newspaper. After the confession was released, prosecutor Wilbur Bentley and Sheriff Robinson disagreed on what to do next. Robinson wanted to arrest Bill McArthur and try him for Alice's murder alongside the others, but Bentley felt there wasn't sufficient enough evidence to indict him if they did bring him in. And I think that's fair because his implication in the murder came entirely from this man's confession, and he even said, like, I never met this guy. I only heard it from this woman who is a liar. She lies. In October of 1981, Orsini was arrested. During her trial, Yankee Hall was the state's principal witness. As a part of a guilty plea he had taken to be charged with first-degree murder instead of capital murder in order to be eligible for parole. His written confession was not introduced at trial, but he did testify, and it matched his confession perfectly. He also provided details about the Orsini home and claimed that he had been there 6 times before Alice's murder and that he and Mary Lee Orsini had slept together. Dr. Woltz testified as well. He admitted that he and Orsini had been in an intimate relationship for a few weeks leading up to Alice's murder, and that based on the evidence, he now believed that the gun used to kill Alice had been his, because the bullets found at the scene were identical to bullets he had purchased for his firearm several years earlier, and 5 of those bullets were missing from his home.
Yikes.
He admitted that he had given access to his home to his girlfriend, Mary Lee Orsini, and thus she also had access to his gun.
Yeah, that'll do it.
He did also testify that Orsini was with him the night Alice's car was bombed, and Yankee Hall said she was with him bombing the car. So, that's a mix-up. Several other witnesses were called to testify. Carl Wilson and Tammy Oakes testified that Orsini was at Carl's home with Hall and that the two had been discussing that they had picked up explosives that day that they would use to bomb Alice McArthur's car.
Okay.
Gail Endelman testified that Orsini called the McArthur home several times the day Alice was murdered, seemingly to ensure that Alice would be home in order for the plan to be successful. She just kept calling.
Who is Gail?
I think she might be a neighbor.
Okay.
Evidence was also presented at trial that Orsini had written a script for herself to use on what she knew would be a tapped phone call.
See, that's never great when they find your script.
When you write it down. In the script, this is the thing. I don't know why you had to write this out.
Okay.
In the script, she planned to implicate Larry McClendon as Alice McArthur's killer, and she said that he had an accomplice that she called a white man who ran with McClendon. You can't remember that without writing it down?
Yeah.
You can't remember to blame it on someone else? Okay. Orsini had the audio tapes of the calls turned into police anonymously, but they were able to recognize the voices on the call as Mary Lee Orsini and her friend, a local real estate agent named Larry Burge.
Okay.
Burge later admitted that Orsini had given him notes to read on the phone.
Cool.
After Orsini herself took the stand, the jury foreman said, quote, "The only thing we learned was all she could be pinned down on was her name," end quote. Which I would like to point out was also fake. Her name is not Mary Lee, it is Mary Myrtle.
Yeah.
Mary Lee Orsini was convicted of conspiracy to commit murder for the killing of Alice McArthur. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, and her conviction was upheld by the Arkansas and United States Supreme Courts.
Heck,
the McArthur case, as it came to be known, was referred to as the most meticulously documented homicide in the history of the Little Rock Police Department.
Wow.
In 1983, Mary Lee Orsini went to court for a second time and was convicted of the murder of Ron Orsini.
Okay, thank God.
Well, hold on to your britches. It was speculated that Orsini's motives could have been mental illness, a romance, money problems, or even the influence of TV shows like Dallas and Dynasty and their overdramatic plot lines, because it was clear to the police and the public that Mary Lee Orsini was addicted to the drama and the media spotlight she was receiving due to her Black Widow status.
Yeah.
She said, "I love this for me."
Yeah.
In 1984, Tommy Robinson became a congressman, resting much of his campaign on his involvement in the McArthur case. In 1985, Orsini petitioned for a writ of habeas corpus in the United States District Court for the Eastern District of Arkansas on 16 separate grounds of relief. She went before a United States magistrate, and he denied her petition without an evidentiary hearing. She then appealed the final judgment of the magistrate, contending that she was denied due process when prior inconsistent statements of material witnesses and when the details of special inducements given to Yankee Hall, a co-conspirator, to testify against Orsini were withheld by the prosecutor's office. She also
a co-conspirator in Ron's case, though?
No.
Okay.
She also claimed that she was denied the right to a fair trial because perjured testimony was allowed to be brought into the trial. She had received a high volume of publicity before the trial began, and she said she had ineffective assistance of counsel at the trial.
Of course you did.
The court ultimately chose to uphold her conviction for the involvement in the death of Alice McArthur, but they did reverse her conviction for Ron's murder on a technicality. The trial court judge had given the jury faulty instructions.
Stupid.
The state of Arkansas then chose not to retry her for Ron's murder because she was already going to be in prison for her life for causing Alice's murder.
That's fair. Why does it matter? More resources for them to use.
Yeah. His family did not agree that it
was
which is also fair, I think.
Yeah. Totally.
Tommy Robinson ran for governor in 1990 and was actually endorsed by President George H.W. Bush, but lost the race. Allegedly, he had told Yankee Hall he would commute his life sentence and have him released from prison within just a few years if he did become governor. Even in 1990, Tommy Robinson believed that Bill McArthur was responsible for his wife's death. And in fact, his insistence on Bill's guilt almost led him to criminal prosecution and hefty civil damages. But he was able to privately settle out of court with Bill McArthur and a detective that he had also accused of being involved.
Interesting.
Bill McArthur was open with the press about the impact his relationship with Mary Lee Orsini had on his life. Bill's legal partner,
bad impact.
Bill's legal partner, Jack Lasseter, said he couldn't find the words to describe how awful it was to watch Bill handle the ordeal of his wife's murder, and that it was extremely hurtful to Bill that people would believe he could harm his wife.
Rude.
Bill was able to include a passage at the back of the book Murder in Little Rock, which read, quote, "You know, you have always heard that beauty is skin deep, but ugly goes all the way to the bone. Well, ignorance does too, and I am not talking about education, because I know a lot of people who are quite well educated who are ignorant as hell. Little minds draw conclusions and never change regardless. I don't waste my time and effort whatever they want to believe. I don't give a damn, and I don't want my kids aggravated by it. If anybody ever comes up to them and says, your father is a murderer, they better not have me standing nearby because they will regret they ever said that."
And I will murder them.
Surprise.
I will prove them right.
Mary Lee Orsini was one of the first inmates transferred to the McPherson unit in Newport, Arkansas in Jackson County when the prison first opened in 1998. And she remained in the McPherson unit until August 11th, 2003, when she died of a heart attack.
Okay.
She had woken up in the middle of the night complaining of chest pain and was taken to the infirmary. A doctor was brought in and Orsini's symptoms worsened. She was then sent to a hospital in Newport where she was pronounced dead at 3:49 a.m. at the age of 55.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Girly.
That's what happens when you're a bad person.
You get so stressed.
Shortly before passing away, Orsini did confess to murdering her husband and being involved in the bombing of Alice McArthur's car, but not of her murder.
Her attempted murder, yes.
Yes.
I just am a failure.
She sent a letter to Circuit Judge Chris Piazza, the prosecutor who sent her to prison, outlining her crimes and motives. She wrote in the letter that she had killed her husband because she had financially ruined her family. And she had arranged for Alice to be murdered because she had been having an affair with Bill McArthur and he refused to choose her over his wife. The idea that you killed your husband because you made a financial mistake, whatever.
And then told everyone that he was like sketchy financially.
When Bill was asked to comment on Orsini's death, he said the reality of it hadn't sunk in for him yet, and that he still didn't understand why she had killed her husband or his wife. He said, quote, "That remains the $64,000 question." I'm trying to figure out where he got that number from.
Yeah. Did he end up giving her 60? Well, no, because he would say he didn't give her money, right?
Yeah.
Suspicious.
He goes on to say, one thing I learned was that I couldn't figure her out. Notoriety and money were the only motivators in her life. She was writing this huge novel about herself and her life and all these forces being brought to bear on her, fully expecting to make a fortune out of it, end quote. When asked if he and Mary Lee had actually had an affair, he said that was not true, and he didn't think Alice's death had anything to do with him. He said that's not her motive. I don't know what she's talking about.
He didn't have an affair with her? I feel like he had kind of said that he did. Like before. Like, I don't know. Okay, interesting.
Bill McArthur died on October 4th, 2009 in Little Rock of natural causes at the age of 71.
Okay, buddy.
The murders committed by Mary Lee Orsini became the subjects for books like Widow's Web, Murder in Little Rock, and Bouquet for Murder, as well as made-for-television. As well as the made-for-television movies A Seduction in Travis County from 1991 and City Confidential's Little Rock, The Politics of Murder from 1999. In Gene Lyons' book, Widow's Web, he said of Orsini and her crimes, quote, call it what you will, murder mystery, soap opera, morality play, political spectacle, or multimedia extravaganza. The McArthur case was all of the above and more. Gaudier than the state fair and more passionate than an Arkansas-Texas football game. It became public entertainment, having less to do with facts and with the passions and prejudices of its audience, end quote. I also think it's notable that it's like they only talk about the McArthur part.
Sure.
So with that, unfortunately, there is not a lot of information on Ron Orsini in the research I was able to do. I could not find a single picture of him or any description of his internal traits, his external traits. But what I do know, based on somebody asking me to cover this case, is that he had a best friend that he had met in childhood and stayed close with into adulthood. And I think that like doesn't happen a lot. Mm-hmm. He had been a pillar in every phase of his best friend's life. He had met his daughter, and he had a wife before Mary Lee, who, in addition to fully taking the blame for the end of their marriage, talked about Ron like he hung the moon. She's like, this is the best man on earth. So even though I couldn't find a biography on him, I think that those facts alone can tell us the kind of person Ron was and what an absolute loss it was for his friends and family when Mary Lee Orsini took his life. Mm-hmm. I wish there was more information on him that I could tell you, but yeah, it just sounds like he was like a prize.
When your ex has good things to say about you,
when your ex is like, I ruined our marriage,
it's on me, man.
Yeah. Especially like because of how he met Mary Lee Orsini by her telling his ex-wife that she was cheating on him, or telling him that his ex-wife was cheating on him. Yeah. Like I would understand if she was like a little bit pissed. Mm-hmm. But she was like, no, that man rocked.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's it.
Good job.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I hope that I got it right for the most part. If not, and you know better, tell me, and we'll correct it on Instagram or something. But yeah, that's it.
Bye.